Today is Thursday, March 27th. We're talking about the exact text from that controversial group chat we've been telling you about. The Atlantic published the transcripts showing America's top leaders getting briefed on attack plans. Also, another round of tariffs, these ones expected to add thousands of dollars onto the price of a new car. Plus, how TikTok is selling itself as a force for good, why public broadcasting is now in the hot seat. And baseball fans, the wait is over, what to expect from MLB's opening day. Those stories and even more news to know next. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. Controversy is growing even more over a U.S. military strike being discussed in a Signal group chat. All week, top officials have argued no classified information was shared in the unclassified chat that included the Atlantic's editor-in-chief. And all week, The Atlantic has said that's not true. So then yesterday, the magazine chose to let the public decide whether the information should have been shared in a non-secure channel or not. It published a transcript of the chat with screenshots. It shows that the morning of the attack, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth confirmed the timeline of exactly when bombs would drop over Yemen. He also disclosed the type of aircraft involved, all information that's typically kept secret to protect the service members assigned to that mission. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz also texted confirmation when targets were hit. Democrats have demanded some of the top leaders in the chat resign, like Hegseth and Waltz. But President Trump says concerns over the chat are all part of a witch hunt meant to disparage his administration in the wake of an attack he called unbelievably successful. He also claimed Signal could be defective. But just yesterday, his press secretary said it was an approved app used by several national security agencies because it's the most secure, efficient way to communicate. That's also a turnaround from earlier this month when the Pentagon sent out an advisory to military personnel warning about a vulnerability in Signal and warned against using it for classified information. Now, some lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are calling for more investigations into the app and this specific group chat. So stay tuned. Something very rare is happening in Gaza this week. Large crowds of Palestinians are taking to the streets to protest Hamas. These are actually the first major protests in Gaza against the terror group since the war broke out more than a year ago. But even before the war, it was rare to see public opposition to Hamas, since when Palestinians did speak out, they were often retaliated against, arrested, and at times beaten. Now, many protesters say they've had enough. Witnesses say thousands of people gathered for at least 2 days this week, demanding Hamas step down from power. Hamas accused protesters of being traitors, pushing suspicious political agendas, and some protesters were forcibly removed. Israel has also seen a surge of new protests over the decision to resume the war, while Israeli hostages are still being held in Gaza. But for now, the fighting continues. Here in the U.S., some foreign-born activists say they're also being punished for protesting. More college students who were active in last year's campus protests over the war in Gaza say they're being targeted for deportation. A Tufts University graduate student from Turkey is among them. She was arrested by immigration authorities this week because Homeland Security said she took part in activities that supported Hamas. Separately, a Columbia graduate student found out her visa was revoked for the same reason. And she ended up flying to Canada to avoid being sent back to her home country. That's on top of the protest leaders at Columbia and Cornell, who we've already told you about, who were arrested earlier this month. Also, another Columbia University student who moved to the U.S. from South Korea when she was 7 says she's been targeted for deportation. So she decided to sue top officials to keep that from happening. Critics have condemned these arrests as assaults on free speech. But the Trump administration argues certain protests are anti-Semitic and can undermine U.S. foreign policy. Officials also say it's a privilege, not a right, to be given a visa to live and study in the U.S., and that it's one that can be taken away. It's promising more arrests to come. President Trump announced his latest tariff target, the auto industry. He says his administration will place 25% tariffs on all imported vehicles, including cars, SUVs, vans, and trucks. The tariffs will also be applied to key auto parts like engines and electrical components. The White House says the move will encourage more domestic manufacturing, meaning more jobs in construction and the auto industry. But new cars are also expected to become much more expensive in the U.S. The research firm Cox Automotive estimates tariffs will add about $6,000 to the price of a car made in Mexico or Canada. And that even includes cars from American automakers that source their components from around the world and even have factories in other parts of North America. The Center for Automotive Research says automakers could respond to higher costs by cutting production and jobs. There could also be retaliatory tariffs from countries like Mexico and Canada. For now, the auto tariffs are set to go into effect a week from today. We have more news for you still coming up, but first, thanks to our sponsor, Hiya Health. Even in the sometimes chaotic mornings we have trying to get our little kiddo out the door to preschool and us ready for work, there's part of our morning routine that always seems to feel kind of easy. And that's time for our morning vitamins. My 3-year-old is always thrilled to get his Hiya Children's vitamins and probiotic and take them every day. He loves the flavor and the routine of it. And I feel good that he's taking them since they're formulated with the help of pediatricians and nutritional experts to help support his immunity, energy, brain function, mood, his developing body, and more. And if you're tired of battling with your kids to eat their greens, Hiya now has Kids Daily Greens Plus Superfoods, a chocolate-flavored greens powder designed specifically for kids, packed with more than 55 whole food ingredients to support brain power, development, and digestion. Just scoop, shake, and sip with milk or any non-dairy beverage for a delicious and nutritious boost your kids will actually enjoy. And we've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/newsworthy. This deal is not available on their regular website. So go to hiyahealth.com/newsworthy and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. Now back to the news. TikTok is still on track to get banned as soon as next week if it cannot find a non-Chinese owner. But there's apparently not a lot of talk about it on the app, the way there was ahead of the last deadline. And it could have something to do with the Trump administration, since creators say TikTok executives have struck a more optimistic tone about the future ever since President Trump took office. TikTok is even planning projects with American creators that extend well beyond next week's deadline. Executives have apparently been trying to convince lawmakers to rethink the law that threatens a ban in the first place. One way it's doing so, TikTok has started selling itself to the American people as a force for good. The app launched a new ad campaign that calls itself life-saving. In one ad, a young woman talks about finding a kidney transplant on TikTok. In another, a creator talks about selling a product that helps people administer CPR. And others highlight small business owners who have seen their businesses thrive in part because of TikTok. The ads are now running on other social media sites as well as billboards. Ads have also appeared in newspapers and on TV. Some of the Trump administration's latest cuts include funding for critical health services. For example, in a document sent to Congress this week, the White House said it was going to end American funding for Gavi. That's an organization that helps buy vaccines for children in developing countries. Plus, the Trump administration will scale back efforts to fight malaria. And it's ending other funding that used to run out of USAID, like money for the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization. The State Department did not get into too many details as to why, just that Secretary of State Marco Rubio decided to end funding that did not align with the priorities of the Trump administration. Other health-related cuts are more likely to impact Americans directly, like the White House canceled more than $12 billion in federal grants to state health departments. Originally, the money was granted in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and it was used for things like testing and vaccinations. But more recently, the grants were being used for tracking infectious diseases, mental health services, addiction treatment, and preparing for the next big emergency. Still, the new health department under President Trump says it, quote, will no longer waste billions of taxpayer dollars responding to a non-existent pandemic. The cuts could still be challenged in court, though, since the money was authorized by Congress, and some states say they're already exploring legal options. On Capitol Hill, GOP lawmakers are pushing for defunding the nation's public broadcasting system. At a contentious hearing yesterday, Republicans grilled the heads of PBS and NPR. The broadcasters get roughly $500 million in public money. But GOP lawmakers say taxpayers should not have to pay for news programming that leans left. They have also brought up concerns about documentaries featuring transgender people. The leaders of NPR and PBS say they actually do have processes in place to make sure a variety of political viewpoints are represented, and they consider themselves non-biased. The head of PBS also spoke about the benefit the network provides to local communities, like with educational programming for children. And both NPR and PBS would struggle to survive without taxpayer money. But that's not the only way the federal government is impacting the arts. This week, the Kennedy Center laid off members of its social impact team. These were the first major layoffs since President Trump took over the center last month. The team's focus was to reach new and diverse audiences beyond those who typically go to the symphony and opera performances. Kennedy Center staffers were told this is just part of an overall reduction in the workforce, and more layoffs are coming. The highly anticipated trailer for Alec Baldwin's new movie, Rust, came out this week. Of course, this comes 4 years after a cinematographer on the movie was shot and killed on set when Baldwin was rehearsing a scene with a gun. The director, who was also hurt in that shooting, came back to finish up the movie with some of the old crew and some new additions. And now, the movie is ready to go and has already been shown in certain screenings. The new trailer shows plenty of cowboys, horses, western landscapes, and lots of gunfights. Rust is coming out in theaters May 2nd. The movie's original producers won't make money off of it. Instead, the cinematographer's husband and son will receive profits as part of a wrongful death settlement. Baseball season is getting an early start. Today is opening day for most teams in the MLB, the earliest opening day ever. Technically, the season kicked off even earlier with an international series in Japan. But this is the official opening day, complete with all the festivities for 26 of the league's 30 teams. And it's an exciting one since several stars are set to debut with new teams. And some top prospects are coming up to the big leagues for the first time. At this point, the Los Angeles Dodgers are favored to win this year's World Series for the second year in a row. But of course, anything can happen. The regular season continues through the end of September. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Thing to Know Thursday. But first, this episode is sponsored by Skims. My closet is quickly filling up with Skims for all my everyday essentials, including short and long sleeve t-shirts that I reach for almost daily. My latest favorite is the Skims cotton jersey long sleeve tee. It's a form-fitting silhouette that flatters my waist, and I can wear it on its own or use it for layering. So it's perfect for this time of year as we transition into spring. The material is super soft, it's smooth and stretchy, so it's really comfortable and it feels great on. As always, I can throw it on with joggers for a super casual look or dress it up with heels and jewelry, and I always appreciate that versatility. Skims, once again, did not disappoint. The tees live up to the hype. So shop Skims tees as well as their ultimate bra collection and more at skims.com and Skims LA flagship on Sunset Boulevard. After you place your order, be sure to let them know we sent you. You can select podcast in the survey and be sure to select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Now back to Thing to Know Thursday. More babies are being born in the U.S. The CDC has recorded about 3.6 million births for 2024, tens of thousands more than the year before. And the total is expected to grow even more when the numbers are finalized. But another set of data also shows overall birth rates only rose for one group of people, Hispanic women. And some sociologists say they wouldn't read too much into it since births and birth rates have actually been falling for years before this. So this may just be a small fluctuation. By the way, the report also says the average age of first-time mothers continues to rise. It was 21 and a half back in the 1970s, and now it's 27 and a half years old. Experts see this as a reflection of women pursuing education and careers before trying to start families. Thank you so much for listening today and making us part of your daily routine. We'll catch you up on more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.